call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Mairon Santos takes on Sodiq Yusuff this Saturday at UFC Fight Night Vegas 106. And I think this is a very close fight, a very evenly matched fight. Both these guys are very skilled on the feet, have similar records. Sodiq Yusuff's going to be much older than Mairon Santos, 31 years old versus Mairon Santos, who's 24. But Mairon Santos, 15-1 in his career, 16 fights, to Sodiq Yusuff, 13-4, 17 fights. So very, very similar in the amount of fights, although Yusuff does have better experience in the UFC, being in there since 2018. But Mairon Santos, not the best performance in his last fight against Francis Marshall. And Francis Marshall is very good. I was tempted to pick Francis Marshall in that fight just because how well-rounded he is. He's good everywhere, very tenacious, had a really good fight over Dennis Bazooka. And arguably he won that fight. I think he won. I think you can argue that he won all 3 rounds in that fight. They both dropped each other. Round 1 with leg kicks. Francis Marshall ends up dropping him with a punch in the first round. Second round was really close, and then the third round was pretty close, but I still think you can give Francis Marshall all those rounds. So heading into this fight, I wasn't very high on Mairon Santos. He beat Con Ofley, who's pretty much just a grappler, doesn't have a lot of stand-up, has a lot of decisions on his record. Lost by ground and pound to Dan Argueta in LFA, which was a big kind of exposing of Mairon Santos's grappling, or lack thereof, of grappling, wrestling, all of the above. But Sodiq Yusuff's not going to be wrestling in this one. He's primarily a striker as well. And Sodiq Yusuff hasn't looked the best as of late, getting finished by Diego Lopez in the first 90 seconds of their fight a year ago, which was his last time out. Fizzled and gassed against Edson Barboza in a main event where he was 10-8'd him in round 1, but then after that just completely gassed and got beat up by Edson Barboza, who was 38 at the time. And he doesn't really have any signature wins in the UFC. Don Shainis, Alex Caceres, who I think is very underrated, but a lot of people beat him. Lost to Arnold Allen, beat Andre Fili, knocked out Gabriel Benitez, which is good, beat Mike Davis back in the day in 2018 on the Contender Series. But in hindsight, how good is Mike Davis considering his last fight against Fares Ziam, where he was just making such low IQ moves? And so I know this fight's going to take place on the feet. And knowing that Francis Marshall was effective because he pushed a high pace, he threatened takedowns, he was going tit for tat on the feet with him because, Mairon Santos always had to be wary of him shooting. But in this one, I don't think Yusuff's going to shoot. He doesn't have the best wrestling, he doesn't have the best takedowns. And so I think if this is, a purely stand-up affair, I think Mairon Santos gets this. He's very good technically in the Muay Thai department. He's really fast, has a really good snappy jab, really heavy leg kicks, very damaging leg kicks, teep kicks to the middle, feints them very well to kind of deter takedowns. Just very calm and composed as well on the feet. And I know Sodiq Yusuff, he pushes a very high pace. He gets in your face, a lot of forward pressure, throws a lot of bombs, hits like a truck, just very powerful guy. But I worry about his cardio and being able to maintain that type of pressure against a guy like Mairon Santos, who's good on the back foot, who can fight anywhere. But then I think of Marshall having a lot of success pressing forward on Santos in their last fight. But he also had the takedown threat. Sodiq Yusuff's just going to be kind of pushing forward, throwing bombs, heavy leg kicks, not necessarily shooting takedowns in this one. So I think I'm going to have to go with Mairon Santos. He is the younger guy. Doesn't have the level of experience as Sodiq Yusuff, like I said earlier, in the UFC, but he has fought a lot recently. Since March of 2024, he's fought 4 times. This will be his 5th time fighting in almost the span of a year, whereas Sodiq Yusuff hasn't fought since April of 2024, coming off of 2 losses, coming off of a KO loss. He's somewhat chinny. He got dropped in the Barbosa fight by a spinning wheel kick, got dropped by Diego Lopez a couple times. Taken some decent damage. His record might not show it necessarily, but, has at least 2 knockout losses on his record. So I think Mairon Santos gets this one done. I do. I just think from a purely technical perspective on the feet, I think he's going to be better. I think he's going to be better with his kicks, fighting behind his jab, going to be a little bit faster. Sodiq Yusuff, he's very powerful, but he kind of wings his punches, whereas I think Mairon Santos is just going to be down the pipe, picking at him all night. I think he can catch him on the feet. I think he can put him out. I really do. I just don't see Sodiq Yusuff coming into this fight with a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence, and hasn't had any wins really in the UFC that really, you know, put me on notice that this guy's somebody to watch necessarily. It's like he's been given his step ups in competition, been given his opportunities to shine against good guys, and he always comes up short, at least as of late since 2021. Whereas Mairon Santos, he looked like a very promising fighter heading into the Francis Marshall fight, which again, you know, technically was his UFC debut, the Conor O'Flea fight. Granted, it was in the UFC, it was a fight night, and it was for the Ultimate Fighter, whereas this will be his actual, you know, first fight in the UFC. So I'm going to go with Mairon Santos in this one to get it done. I think he can outpoint Sodiq Yusuff, keep him at bay, and get the KO or get the finish. And I see Sodiq Yusuff kind of coming out of the gates hot, looking to finish him in the first round, having a big first round, but Mairon Santos kind of biding his time and weathering the pressure of Sodiq Yusuff, who will eventually slow down. Won't be the fastest on the feet after that, will be somewhat hittable, and kind of fizzles as the fight wears on. So I'm going to go with Mairon Santos to get this one done. Thanks.